Eagles. Eagles.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome into Birds 365, your daily deep dive into the Philadelphia Eagles. I'm Zander, Krause, your host, joined by my co-host, Eagles insider John McMullen, as we bring you the latest news, insights, and everything you need to know to stay connected to the Philadelphia Eagles. Johnny Mac, how you doing on this Wednesday morning, brother?
Doing well. Big practice day. First day of the week of preparation. Saquon week. Back to MetLife Stadium.
Yeah, Saquon week. Good stuff. John, coordinator, spoke yesterday. Got plenty to get into today on the show. Appreciate everybody checking in on the chat. And for those listening afterward on the podcast, appreciate all of you guys. Do what you got to do to help us grow. If you're on podcast, leave us a review. Leave us a 5-star review if you enjoy the show. And if you're over here on YouTube, hit that like button. We appreciate that very much. John, we'll talk about some O-line juggling with Jordan Milaida missing a couple days. Eagles made a few roster moves yesterday on the practice squad, something minor, but we'll talk to you about that. And then the coordinators spoke. We will start there. Any key takeaways from the coordinators that spoke yesterday? John Vick spoke, Kellen spoke, and Michael Clay spoke. Any big takeaways from that?
Vic's honesty, as typical. You know, he pretty much shot down the thought that Nick Sirianni was making a defensive play call, which I don't know. People believe that, as I said, from day one. It's pretty silly, but brings up the larger point I've been talking about of why Nick decides to do those things in the first place. Unprompted as well, right. I think is an important part of it. So that's number one. And Kellen Moore, God bless the guy, but I mean, he's a politician.
Yeah, holy mackerel.
Politician season, and you know, he's never going to say anything, which is fine, I guess. I don't think there's much to ever discern from what he says, but I do think, you know, the thought of his offense versus Nick's offense versus Brian Johnson as the play caller versus Shane Steichen. Again, people are evidently starting to notice now. I think it has more to do with the quarterback than the coordinator. And by that, I mean, it's not necessarily a bad thing. The Eagles have had their longest stretch of success in franchise history. And I think people assume it's a bad thing when I say this. Not necessarily a bad thing. They're building an offense around what the quarterback does well and what the quarterback likes. And that's why it looks similar. Again, for all the talk about motion, yeah, Kellen Moore's way down in his personal history of using motion, but they're also way up from Nick Sirianni's use of motion. So, you know, that's the couching area. Like right. He's not going to go into a full-blown Sean McVay offense because Jalen doesn't want that, nor should he. So you got to find a happy medium and get back to the sustained long-term success. And the bigger question should be not somebody's scheme, but building a scheme around the players you have to take advantage of the players you do have and what they do well. And that changes from year to year.
John, there's still just such a large swath of Eagles fans, and I'm not criticizing them at all, but I will say it still exists, and I'd like to make Birds 365 fans the most educated Eagles fans in the world, as we always try and do here on the show. John, there's still a large swath of people who believe this is Nick Sirianni, who, and it's not Jalen Hurts who's the common denominator, but it's Nick Sirianni. I mean, even an Eagle legend yesterday who's out there tweeting about the common denominator, Seth Joyner, with some clips of 22, Jalen throwing the ball over the middle of the field. You know, Nick is the common. How do we dispute this, John? That it's not Nick Sirianni that's in. You
can't dispute it. I mentioned yesterday, and God bless Seth, but I mentioned yesterday. If you already have the GPS programmed, it's taking you where you want to go, no matter what. If you're that close-minded and you say it's Nick Sirianni, you're going to get there no matter what. No matter how many turns, no matter how detours you want to go, It's taken you there. I would listen to the quarterback. Kurt Warner, evidently, you brought it up, said it. I mean, look at the passing concepts. Don't look at the quarterback. Look at the passing concepts. And back, this is a perfect example of the detour. Nick Sirianni helped put together 3 different offenses in 3 different years in Indianapolis because of the upheaval they had at the quarterback position. Andrew Luck was different than Phillip Rivers. Jacoby Brissett was next. Andrew Luck was different than Jacoby Brissett. Jacoby Brissett was different than Phillip Rivers. 3 different offenses in 3 different years because of the upheaval at the quarterback position. And what do people say there? Because they want to go to the GPS route? Well, that was Frank. That was Frank Reich. Look, if you want to get there, you're going to get there. You're going to get a lot of detours because you're going to keep running up to common sense conclusions that point to a different direction, or you're going to get there. Yeah, it's as simple as that. He's already changed. When he got here, people forget. They put way too much on Jalen Hurts' plate as a young quarterback during that 2-5 start in 2021. And they scaled it back. And they tried to start building an offense better around Jalen Hurts. And they found what worked and they clicked for a long period of time. Then people made adjustments. They haven't adjusted as well back to them. But that's what they're trying to do right now. That's what they're trying to do. That doesn't mean make Jalen Hurts in the Jared Goff or Kirk Cousins or Brock Purdy. Oh, put him under center and have him turn his back to the defense and fake the handoff to Saquon. That'll work. Boy, they would hate that inside of 10 seconds. It's look, you want somebody to blame. That's what Nick's here for. The lightning rod, blah, blah, blah. Blame them. I don't care. But you're not going to see a drastic change in this offense with this quarterback because he doesn't want that stuff that you want so badly.
Excellent analogy by you, John, with the GPS. I think that at least resonates with me well. I hope all of our viewers understand where you're going with it as well. By the way, appreciate everybody here this morning. Got a great crowd in here on the live show. I appreciate all of you guys who listen in on the live every morning. Frank from Philly, good to see you, brother. James Carver, Mr. Perez, Bruce Banner's in here, Kenny P, Eagles fan, Priest Joe Whip. What's up, Joe? Now, Christian, Gerald Ford, Bleed Green, bunch of members in here. Good to see all of you guys. Thank you for your support here on JAKIB Sports. John, we'll talk about some of the NFL news as well yesterday. A bunch of trades coming down yesterday in the NFL. We'll get into that a little bit. Eagles roster moves. Let's hit on them real quick and appreciate the super chats. We'll get to them at the end of this segment before we get to Mike Gill. A couple roster moves yesterday, John, for the Eagles. Anything to make of them signing Perry Nickerson, the cornerback, back to the practice squad, and they waived Jacob Harris, who came, I believe he came off the IR, right?
Yeah, Jacob got hurt in the final preseason game. If you remember I believe it was the opening kickoff where he broke bones in his face. It was such a hard hit.
Oh, man.
Yeah, he's good, potentially good special teams player and very fast guy, very, very, very tall, and I thought there was an opportunity he could make the team late before he got hurt as that special teams last receiver kind of role. But obviously went in a different direction. Now that he's healed up, they can wave him off IR, and he might be back. Don't rule that out as far as coming back at some point because they did really like him. Perry Nickerson. Another guy, veteran player, played with Vic in Miami last season, so he's familiar with them. And Slay's a little bit banged up this week. We'll get a better indication on if there's a chance he'll miss this game, but it's always good to have another body just to practice. Obviously, he's on the practice squad, so you're going to have to go through Rodgers and Ringo and even Eli Ricks before you get to a Perry Nickerson. And he's more of a slot guy as well. It's interesting. The Eagles have 2 corners on their practice squad, and AJ Woods is the other one. He's a nickel guy too. So I'm a little bit surprised about the redundancy of it, but Nickerson can play elsewhere. He can play outside. You don't want him playing outside,
Yeah,
but
right.
you never want. Yeah, right. Everybody can play. You can line I always say you can line up anybody wherever you want. Everybody say, well, he's an inside guy. He's an out. You can line them up. The question is the effectiveness of it.
Results may vary.
Yes, exactly. So, good depth option on a week that Slay might not practice fully, and we'll see where he is. Did see him after the game, and he was his jovial, happy self. So I don't think it's terribly serious, but that doesn't mean he couldn't miss a week or two.
Other stuff in Eagle news, John. I want to get your opinion on this. It has been basically confirmed, obviously, even Jordan Milaida himself said it. He's not going to be in there this week. He could miss a couple games. We'll have a bigger update on his injury status in the days to come and probably in the weeks to come, depending on how that hamstring injury develops. The bottom line is he's not playing versus the New York Giants on Sunday. That means, John, that Jeff Stoutland has some decisions to make. What do you think he's going to do? And then what would you do in this circumstance? Do you move Mekhi Becton over to left tackle and put Tyler Steen in at right guard? Do you keep Becton in at right guard and then just slot in Fred Johnson at the left tackle? I mean, for me, the question would be, how much better at left tackle is Becton than Fred Johnson in order for me to make that move? How do you see this playing out for the Eagles offensive line this week?
Yeah, I think the short nature complicates it a little bit. If it really is just a couple, and now we've
Right.
heard Jordan say that term, and Nick use it. If it's really 2 games, I think that may change the thinking. Like if it were 4, 6 games, I say, well, Becton's going to be the left tackle. But they might try to persevere to not upset his development at right guard. There's a bunch of things you have to consider here. I mean, he's a natural left tackle. And he's learning right guard and he's doing a good job. And you really want to take him away from that for a short-term absence of Jordan Mailata, especially with the opponents on the schedule where you think you might be able to persevere anyway. It's a difficult question. 2 games. If it's 2 games, I'm keeping Mekhi where he is, and I'm playing Fred Johnson. If it's 3 games, then you're teetering. If it's 4 games, no question, I'm moving Becton to left tackle. So a bunch of things are factored into it. I think if it's really that short-term absence, I think they'll try to persevere with Fred Johnson.
Yeah, for me, I mean, I agree with what you're saying, depending on how long term it is. I would go with whatever gives you a better outcome at left tackle. I believe the left tackle, that's Jalen's weak side. I think you want that to be as bolstered as possible, John. I mean, you don't want to have too much pressure coming off of there. If you can make that better and maybe take a small hit at right guard, I think I'd prefer that than having a liability at left tackle. Now, maybe Fred Johnson's pretty damn good. I don't know what the difference would be between him and Becton at left tackle. Remember, everybody, Mekhi Becton was a first-round draft pick in New York, and he's here in Philly as a reclamation project, basically. So it's not like he had great moments as a left tackle in this league. Now, maybe he's better here under Stoutland, but I think that would be the big question, right? How much better would Becton be than Fred Johnson?
Yeah, I think pretty significantly. I mean, yeah, he didn't work out with the Jets, but a lot of that had to do with injuries more than anything else. Like I don't think the question was, oh, he can't play. Had a lot of injuries, and then when you're not on the field, and then you're moving back from left to right tackle because they had to persevere and they found a better option at left tackle. So then they're at right tackle. Bunch of different things happen, but I don't think anybody looks at Mekhi Becton and says, well, he can't play. It's just a matter of staying healthy, getting situated. Now he's in a better situation. You see it. I mean, he's never played right guard in his life, and he's not an all-pro, but he's been pretty solid. And yeah, I mean, he's significantly better. But again, George is going to be back. And do you want to create that upheaval? The opponents are a big part of it as well. I mean, if it were the playoffs, I'm moving him. I'm moving him to left tackle.
Right.
And I'm putting Tyler Steen in
Well,
at right
Jarrell in the
guard.
chat brings up a good point. Do we want Dexter Lawrence going up against Tyler Steen? You know, that probably factors into the equation as well. When
Yeah,
you
the
think about who
opponent
they're playing.
factors in. Dexter, a bad team, but good player.
Great
maybe
play.
the best defensive tackle in football right now. So, Mackay might have problems with him. Not might, will.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's a thing you have to weigh as well. And, but the question is, Brian Burns is on the outside, and they're going to be aiming at Fred Johnson. And that's the strength of the Giants. They don't even have Kayvon Thibodeau, and it's still the strength because he's on injured reserve. So either way, you're kind of up against it. And that's what happens when you lose good players like Jordan Milaida. You can't just replace them. But if it's short term, that's the way I would go. I would, and Fred's played a lot of football already because that's another part of it. Because of injuries to both Lane and now Jordan, played like well over 100 snaps. So he's at least gotten a feel for it. I think that helps as well. And then, yeah, I mean, but if it were like rest of the season, I don't think any question Mekhi Becton's your left tackle.
Yeah, we'll see what they do in the game. We got a commercial break coming up as we have Mike Gill set to join us here in hour number 1, and then we'll have Brandon Lee Goutman in hour number 2. So 2 great guests today. I see Mike just checked into the green room. Before we get to our commercial break, let's go to the Super Chats. A couple Super Chats from our great viewers this morning. James checks in. James Carver. He says, James, appreciate it. He says, James says, not sure if y'all heard Milaida's weekly show yesterday, but he stemmed my concerns regarding Fred filling in for him while gone because he's worked to succeed at right tackle like Nola, but Fred's a natural left tackle and said swings wiping his ass with the wrong hand. Johnny Mac, your response to that with Fred Johnson?
He brought that one back. That was Andre Dillard. I shouldn't give Jordan. Andre used to say that first. That's probably where he got it from. But yeah, I mean, yeah, Fred is a natural left tackle. So he was out there for a very short period of time when, against Myles Garrett late in the game. It wasn't great, but it's Myles Garrett. Individually, it wasn't great. So there's a lot of factors you play into it, but he's definitely more comfortable at left tackle than right tackle. And most people have that preference. Andre Dillard couldn't play right tackle at all. I bring up Andre, didn't want to, didn't like it. Jordan, on the other hand, maybe because he never played before, he's like, I'll play right tackle, I'll play left tackle. He'll do whatever. So it's always up to the individual. But Fred is definitely more comfortable at left tackle. But people are going to be coming after him. And Brian Burns is hot. Had a really good game. If people suffered through it, that Giants loss over the weekend, but it's not a good matchup on paper. Brian Burns against Fred Johnson, but you got to play somebody.
Yep, good response there, Johnny Mac. Let's go to the next super chat. Big Fish Little Boat says, Zander, why is Barkley getting a pass in all this? Cost 1 game, kept the Browns in it, and has done a few bonehead things. Thanks for the $5 super chat, Big Fish Little Boat. Johnny Mac, your response.
I haven't heard Big Fish Little Boat, but well done. Yeah, I don't know. I do know. It's similar to the Like, this is a guy who was the number 2 overall pick. We talked about it with Devin White as the number 5 overall pick who didn't produce. This guy is a number 2 overall pick that produced, and people think he's a superstar. He's a really good player. But there are some holes to his game. You saw him with the drop pass. He's not a natural pass catcher. When we talk about Saquon Barkley as a good pass protector, he is, but that's in the modern game compared to his peers. It's not like the old days when you had guys who would really step up and stone people. And you saw it when you have a really good player like JOK, it's a mismatch. And then, the most egregious error of all was the second and 1, 60 seconds left.
Yeah.
3 timeouts. Easy first down. Had about 4 yards to work with. If he just went straight ahead, the Eagles would have called the timeout. For some reason, he thought he had to get out of bounds. That's not understanding the situation as a veteran player. And we've seen that happen with Miles Sanders in the past, and Miles would get excoriated for not doing the right thing. And he's right. I mean, he gets a pass, man. That was bad. I mean, he completely didn't understand the situation.
Yeah, no doubt about that. Good, Big Fish. Thanks for the super chat, man. I think you bring up a good point about Barkley. We'll see if the tide starts to turn. He's going to have to piece together another couple good games here in Philadelphia. Let's go to the next super chat. Nick Gonzalez checks in. Nick says, "I don't understand us fans. If we had a head coach like Vic, we would have him a coach like Nick. We hate. Aren't no matter whose coach we would hate." I think he's just saying we would hate any coach that we have.
Well,
Nick,
yeah,
thank
I mean,
you
they
for
would
the $5
hate
super chat. Johnny Mac,
Vic.
your thoughts?
They would hate Vic. Yeah, I mean, yeah. If you don't win, they hate everybody. That's not just Philadelphia, though. I mean, that's football fans in general. Well, you could see the Eagles' history of offensive coordinators. They don't like any of them. They don't like any of them. Eventually, they'll turn on. Either you leave, like Shane was able to leave, or they would have turned on Shane. And they didn't think Shane was great the year prior. They didn't think Frank was great. Jeffrey Lurie and Howie Roseman were trying to fire Frank Reich in 2016. I mean, yeah, I mean,
That's the reality there. One more super chat real quick, and we got to get to a commercial break with Mike Gill. Seth Shifley checks in. Seth, appreciate it. He says, if the Eagles want an elite pass-catching back, go back in time, bring back Brian Westbrook. He would make Barkley look silly. Yeah, thank you for the $5 super chat, Seth. Yeah, Barkley's no Brian Westbrook when it comes to catching the football.
no, I don't know where that stemmed. I talked about it all off season.
Yeah.
I don't know
And
where
John,
that
you took
came
a lot
from.
of shit for it, telling us about it.
I mean, he's fine. He's not bad, but he's certainly not natural at it. Like I always say, like Kenny Gainwell's a better pass catcher, just a pass catcher, just a natural catcher of the football. And people lose their mind. It's not even close, to be honest. It doesn't mean Kenny's a better player. He's not. But just as a pure catcher of the football, he's worlds better. There's so many. I talk about Aaron Jones all the time. Watch that guy play. And obviously, Christian would be number one far and away. Christian McCaffrey's injured right now. But yeah, he's not those guys, to put it mildly.
Good stuff, Johnny Mac. Big thanks to our 4 super chats this morning. Any other super chats that come in, we will get to after Mike Gill. So big thanks to all of you guys in the chat. Hit that like button. Let's get to our commercial break. Mike Gill coming up next from 97.3 ESPN. Before I do that, let me tell you guys about a great partner at BetUS. Go check out BetUS now, everybody. Go to betus.com.pa and look at your screen. There's a promo code on the screen. It's YouTube 150. And that'll give you a 150% sign-up bonus on your very first deposit, and you get 125% on your second and third deposits. They have the fastest payouts in the industry, 24/7 customer support, and they'll even give you your own custom account manager for any of your questions or help you need with betting on there. So go to betus.com.pa, betus.com.pa, and use that promo code YouTube 150. Back in 3 minutes, everybody, with Mike Gill from 97.3 ESPN.
If you missed any of today's show on the JAKIB Media channel, listen to the podcast on your way home. Available on YouTube, Apple, and Spotify.
He's blocked well and tries to cut through the middle. Oh!
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on Sports Grid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on Sports Grid. Score and save at Southeastern PA and Delaware with Colony Pools this football season, and let the experts close your pool with a custom Merlin safety cover in green for the birds. And if you join our Winter Watch team, we'll give you another 20% off, and Colony Pools will handle it all. Keep your tiles on your pool, not in your pool. Fly with Colony right now, birds fans. Visit flywithcolony.com.
Hi everybody, my name's Jason Lombardi. I'm an inspector at DryTech. At DryTech we offer three major services, the first one being basement waterproofing. The second service we offer is foundation and structural repairs. And then the third service that we offer is mold remediation. If you feel you are having a waterproofing issue, give DryTech a call or check us out online.
Heading down the shore, have a ball once more.
Here, imaginations run wild and time stands still. Because here, you can find the best of the Jersey Shore, all on one 5-mile island. So leave the old you behind and get lost in the woods.
Wild, wild, wildwood day.
Plan your stay in the Wildwoods today.
EAGLES, Eagles.
Welcome back in, everybody, to a Wednesday edition of Birds 365. Joined now by Mike Gill from 97.3 ESPN down the shore. Mike, how you doing on this Wednesday morning, brother?
Doing all right. A little late night Flyers for me. I'm a little tired today.
Oh, yeah, they got to win that game. Each Cobb gets 2 goals, and you can't get it out the win, Mike.
Yeah, I couldn't believe. I actually didn't make it through overtime in the whole game, but it was 2-0, 3-2 when I went to turn it off. I couldn't believe I woke up. I said, "How do you lose that game up 2-0?" Yeah. And but you were bound. That team, Edmonton had been 0-3.
Yeah, that team's good. They're a good team too. Yep.
Yeah. I'm
sure most people here have no idea what we're even talking about.
No, I'm going to lean. I don't know what you're talking about, but I got to lean on you guys for the hockey knowledge. Hockey's the one sport that I don't know that much about. I have to do research. I used to have to cover some Flyers playoff games. I'd have to do so much research just to pound something out that made a modicum of sense.
I get the people like yesterday, the Phillies have a press conference and, they brought Thompson back, which was a kind of a lightning rod of a decision. And we're talking about this. And we're getting text after text after text. We must have had 150 texts in the first half hour of the show. And some random guy says, "Hey, no one wants to hear about the negativity of the Phillies. Why not talk about the Flyers?" And I'm like, listen, I could be the biggest hockey fan in the world. The problem with hockey is it's just not a second-guessing sport. That's why football and baseball are such radio-friendly shows like this, is because there's so much second-guessing. Hockey just doesn't have the second-guessing. It's not like, hey, you should have left that line on the ice for an extra 30 seconds. It is what it is. You could talk about the backup goalie or the goalie is a convert, but there's not a lot of second in-game guessing like football, which, reads shows like this.
Yeah,
Hey,
I
yeah,
love the game. I mean, I grew up playing it, so it's a lot of fun for me to watch, and I do love it still. But I understand what you're saying. It's definitely uh, not as radio friendly for sure.
Yeah, it's just not like I guarantee if there was more second guessing where you and look, you said you played it. Not a lot of people played hockey, so they don't have that feeling. Like we blame the coach for everything in every sport. Fans love to blame the coach. Why? Because they feel they could coach these sports. They played at some time in their life and feel that they have enough ability to do the job. Most people never played hockey, so they don't know what the coach even does in hockey to second guess or say, I could do a better job than John Tortorella. But I guarantee there's 98% of people watching this show right now that think they could do a better job than Nick Sirianni.
It's true.
yeah. You might have lowballed that 98% at this particular time.
I think we have a couple realistic people in there.
Well, I hope so. But I will say, I'm not the hockey expert, but those guys seem to get as much shit as anybody else. I mean, the Flyers go through coaches like socks.
Yeah, John, the Flyers are not a good organization.
Well,
I did not grow
that.
up a Flyers fan.
Well,
even
to
though I
be
live
fair,
in
it's not
Michigan.
just the Flyers. It's hockey for whatever reason. They fire the coach and go from hard ass to players. They flip back and forth in the middle of seasons all the time. Well, I was having this discussion yesterday. Colin Thompson, who played in the NFL, you guys know him, but for the listener, he played and he was on the team that fired Matt Rule in the middle of the week 5.
Yeah.
What it's like to go through a coaching change at the NFL level, like because people want Sirianni gone. Okay, what's it like for the players to have to go through that? And his answer really was, it depends on who gets elevated to that job. That's a big factor. So many times, you say, why did they pick the offensive line coach or the quality? Like, it's not usually the biggest name guy that gets elevated to the head coaching role. Sometimes, it's just a random guy on the staff that all the players kind of like, who's not going to change a whole heck of a lot of things. Like, if Sirianni goes, you might not say, well, they're just going to elevate Kellen Moore so that everything changes the way that Kellen Moore wants it. They want to try to keep it as much the same.
It's interesting you bring that up, Mike. For some reason, we were walking back from talking to coordinators, and I said, if they fire Nick Sirianni, which they're not, so don't get too excited, Nick Sirianni haters.
You think they're happy that their game got flexed out of the 425?
Yeah, well, we'll talk about that. Certainly not a positive for either team, to be honest, the Philadelphia Eagles or the Cincinnati Bengals, but positive for John McMullen. So I like it. But I said if you wanted to go, everybody, and I've even gone back and forth and say, well, I'd hire Vic more than Kellen because Vic's been a head coach and all that kind of thing, but the guy I'd really hire is Michael Clay. I mean, you talk about a smart freaking guy. And if you go through, there was a while in the COVID era, or when you didn't have your coach for a particular reason, almost always the guy being elevated was the special teams coach. And the thought process behind it was, that's the only other coach that talks to the entire team during the season. So he's got a feel for the entire team versus, and then you don't want to have upheaval on the offensive and defensive side. So that's the thought process behind the short-term elevation of the special teams coach. But he's a great communicator. He's just a natural with people, just in that aspect of it and dealing with them, which is big when you're a head coach. Nobody talks about the special teams coach anywhere, not just Philadelphia. And of all places, Philadelphia should know because of John Harbaugh, the one guy who sort of has taken. Now, he got to spend a year as a secondary coach at the end of his term here, but longtime special teams coach. And he's done obviously a tremendous job. I would go with Michael Clay. That's what I would go.
Well, it doesn't help that he had a field goal blocked, a punt blocked, so his special teams aren't off to a rip-roaring start here.
But as Nick said, actually overall, they've had 3 catastrophic plays. But my major point is they play pretty well overall, consistently with the catastrophic plays. And by the way, again, you know, there's a lot of ways to pick up teams, but again, if you don't run run out of bounds on 2nd and 1, if you don't give up a sack, you're not taking a 57-yard field goal with Myles Garrett on the field.
Yeah.
So everybody contributes to that as well. But I'm just talking the communication aspect because I think that's the biggest.
Yeah, I think I always ask the question, the hot coordinator seems to be the guy who gets the job. I said, but what qualifies him to be the leader of 53 guys? He might be a brilliant play designer or caller, but that doesn't mean he's qualified to run an entire locker room of offense and defense and special teams. So I think a lot of times we see these hot coordinators. Robert Saleh was this, great defensive coordinator, but he was not a great head coach. We see it so often that teams always pick the guy who seems to have the hot scheme at the time or had the really good season as the head coaching hires come. But how many of these guys end up making it as great head coaches? So I think you just got to find the right, and that's what the Eagles hope or think they have, is the right motivator, the right guy that the players want to play for, that's more important than what scheme they're running now. The problem is how much of this, people who don't want Sirianni, you're not bringing in someone from outside the organization in week 6, 7, 8, 9. It's going to be, if they fired Sirianni in season, they're just going to elevate someone who's already here. Right. So this whole thought of they're going to bring in Mike Vrabel or Bill Belichick in the middle of a season, if that's what you want Sirianni for, so that they go and get one of those guys in season, that is not happening. You are getting either Vic Fangio or potentially Kellen Moore to kind of get elevated to that head
or Michael Clay
spot. Maybe
I'll go as far as to say it's going to be none of the above because I don't think Lurie's going to move on from Nick mid-season.
Nick's not getting fired, but yes.
I don't either. I'm just saying to the people who want that to happen, who are wanting it to happen because they think the result will be a Bill Belichick or a Mike Vrabel because they're available. You don't fire a guy in season and bring a guy outside and just say, hey, come and coach this team as is right now with no training camp, no nothing, and implement. When has that ever happened?
Bringing in a completely new guy
from in the middle, somebody get fired in season and the coach that replaced him was hired from outside.
That's a really bad way to go about it.
That's got to be the worst way possible. You go through all of training camp, all this prep, and then in week 6 you're bringing in a whole new name.
I don't remember it happening. I don't remember a time where that has happened.
Well, technically Jeff Saturday. I mean, he was close to the organization, but
true.
He was not doing anything as far as coaching. That is the sign of a terrible organization. I mean, just terrible, beyond terrible. Or if you do something like that. So yeah, that you're right though. That definitely is not going to happen. And the only way Nick Sirianni gets fired at this point is if he goes into Jeffrey Lurie's office and does something completely, out of character, and he wants out and makes it.
And by the way, I would say Jeff Saturday was basically brought there to make sure that the organization didn't crumble. Let everybody do what they've been doing. You just be the guy who's in charge here. They're not bringing in a guy who wants to come in and implement his offense, his defense, all that stuff.
No, absolutely. And I would never advocate anybody, even the New York Jets.
Yeah.
Look at the way they played. How many penalties in that game? Just completely unprepared. It's dumb. It's dumb. That's something you do in the off season.
But all right, so this conversation seems to be leading to: are we coming to terms with? Are we making the judgment that this Eagles team is who they are, and there is not more growth to that next echelon of team? Because right now it looks like this team is a middle of the pack at best team, and that's not what we thought we were getting.
I gotta think there's more growth with this team. Like I gotta think that there's more. I mean, you got 2 new coordinators coming in this year. Yet, you've had 5 games on the season. You have this roster, on at least on the offensive side, that on paper is stacked. I got to think that there's more growth with this team. I got to think it. Now, that doesn't mean I'm gonna be right.
I do not think they're a Super Bowl contender. I think they're a playoff level team. And I think there's going to be growth. I think they're going to be better. They got a chance to have a little run here because of the schedule.
Yeah, okay, so they just barely squeaked by Cleveland, and I'm not one that cares about the aesthetics of a victory. Okay, you won in the to that point. Nick is right. You won in the NFL. That's hard. I talked to you, John, about this. The disconnect between the fans and the team is the fans look at the Browns as a team that is not very good. The NFL organization, coach, franchise says it's hard to win in this league. So they look at it as, we won a game in the NFL no matter what it looked like. We got the job done. The fans are saying that's not good enough for us. You beat a team that we, the fans, don't deem to be quality enough for that performance. So no one's going into the Giant game saying, we're better than the Giants. You're now looking at these games not like we're saying, well, they got a schedule coming up. You're saying, well, the Giants have a good defense. Well, if you're the Eagles, you should be better than the Giants. Not they have a good defense. Who gives a rat's ass about their defense?
That's true, but to your point
that's the point is that's where we are, John, where you're legitimately worried that you're not good enough to beat the Giants. You're looking at a Bengals team that has really struggled this year, and you're worried like that offense still has a lot of talent. If you're at the point where we're better than that team, I don't care that that Bengals team is not very good.
And to, Cleveland specifically is about the quarterback, nothing else. And, the quarterback has played badly. The best player on the field from any team, and everybody would tell you, was Myles Garrett. I mean, they couldn't even block Dalvin Tomlinson. People in Philadelphia probably don't know who that is unless they remember him from his days with the Giants. The Eagles don't have a pass rusher like Zadarius Smith. And by the way, he's the second best pass rusher on the Browns because they have Myles Garrett. You saw Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah. Did the Eagles have a linebacker like that?
No, the Browns
Denzel Ward
is a
better cornerback than any of the Eagles cornerbacks.
Yeah.
As you heard Nick Sirianni raving about him, he's one of the few players that his kid can buy a jersey of.
I was dying for him to give me a mediocre player's name. I wanted it so bad for him to say, I wouldn't let my son get a jersey of, and he was like, I can't say someone's name.
He was thinking that was just a goofy thing to do, but I agree that Denzel Ward is a good player.
But my point is, because fans think the Browns stink.
Right, but the fans can't separate that the Browns stink, but they have a really good defense. That's the problem. So this is where you have this battle of Sirianni saying, we won the game. It's really hard. And the fans saying, I don't care. It wasn't a quality enough win. You don't look like a team that I can believe in. And because of what happened last year, you won 10 games and they were all these clunky, ugly wins. And you were like, we're winning. And then the wheels fell off. So I think there's a little bit of that remembrance of, I don't care that you were 10-1. They were ugly wins. And then you completely fell apart.
Yeah, I mean, I just think, and Zander said it, and that's fine because he's speaking for most of the fan base. Like, they think this talent is way better than it is. I mean, they have tremendous talent on the offensive side of the football amongst the starters. You already saw it with AJ, Devontae, and Lane, the downtick when you got to go to the depth. You can never replace players like that, but the Eagles have bad depth. There's other teams that have decent depth, and nobody has great depth. But now you're going to see with Jordan Mailata, we're talking about, well, can he persevere with Brett Johnson? Do you have to move Mekhi Becton? Do you have to put Tyler Steen in there? Dallas Goedert. Grant Calcaterra showed up for one game, had a career game. Grant Calcaterra ain't Dallas Goedert if Dallas is forced to play. And people think they don't want to see Darius Slay. A lot of people, not everyone. Boy, they're not going to enjoy it when he's not out there. I can tell you that. Might not be this week because of the limitations of the Giants offensively. But who knows if Malik Neighbors is back? He's tough to deal with.
Yeah.
And yeah, I don't think the depth on this team is good at all. So basically, you're talking about an 11-man group that is really talented. And then from there, you could argue they're a below average team talent wise.
Yeah, but is it just the fan base that I mean, John, there was like every national.
No doubt. No doubt.
And
Because,
also, I try not to speak for every fan. I mean, I think everybody's got their own opinions.
Well, yeah,
I just speak the best I can with what I know. But I don't know. I feel like I wasn't the only one that came into this season like, well, damn, this is a pretty good roster
because people focus on the splash players, and the Eagles have a lot of splash players.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a very fantasy football mindset that, when you have good skill players, that puts fear into, you go back to when the Detroit Lions were drafting wide receivers in the first round year after year after year. And you're like, man, they got Charles Rodgers and, all these guys, and they never did anything because their offensive line. The Minnesota Vikings have been going through that for years. They had Dalvin Cook and Justin Jefferson, and they had all these high flying.
Yeah, we got great lines too, guys. I mean,
that's what to me is the confounding part about this is that you have an offensive line that teams in this league would kill for, and you are still this offensively. Now, the problem with it is it has been blurred by the fact that you did not have your full group of guys for multiple weeks playing together. So we really haven't seen what the offense should look like. But with that offensive line, you would think, man, we should really be able to
that's
dominate.
the thing. And by the way, that's when Detroit took off. They have a great offensive line.
Their offensive line is elite right now. And that's the big difference between what they do. Because we were talking about this the other day. Are Amon-Ra, St. Brown, and Jamison Williams, would you say, man, they're way better than Brown and Smith? You might like them more, but they're not, And would you say I would take Montgomery and Gibbs over Barkley? You might prefer them, but you wouldn't say it's a definitive. Where the definitive lies right now is their offensive line is getting it done, man, and they're creative in the play call. You are not creative in the play call. And your offensive line has not performed to where you expected it to.
I got to bail out the offensive line a little bit on this conversation. I
agree
that Detroit's offensive line is probably top in the league right now. But are we going to sit here and say
I'm not going to say
the Eagles' offensive line isn't playing good enough, or is there another variable there? I mean, Jared Goff and Jalen Hurts are very different style of quarterbacks. Jared Goff's style probably lends better to using an offensive line like that and getting better results than Jalen Hurts, who's constantly rolling out or on the move or moving away from that offensive line. I don't know. I don't think I can put all that on the other.
What I'm saying, Zander, is the Eagles do have a good offensive line. They are not doing a good job. I say this all the time. Brown and Smith, we perceive to be the stars. Barkley's a star. No. The star of this team should be and has been the offensive line, but they are not utilizing the offensive line as the star. They're trying to make other stars shine brighter. Your star is your offensive line. Detroit has said, you know who our star is? It's our offensive line. You know why it is? Because they are nastier, tougher, and they will beat the crap out of you. And then when they beat the crap out of you, the rest of their stars can shine the brightest. You know why? Because the other team is mentally beaten. You watched it the other day. They ran the ball and pounded that team.
Yes,
and then when they finally pounded them, they said, you know what? We're going to have some fun with you. And we're going to start showing how diverse we can be on offense. But they know who their star is. Yes, they have Ra and Jamison Williams and these great running backs. But their star is the nastiness of their offensive line. And until the Eagles figure that out, this offense is going to continue to be, in the words of Lane Johnson, constipated.
I swear, sometimes it feels like they're doing it backwards. You come out of the box and you throw 3 go routes, and I'm like...
You are one of the few teams in this league that has the ability to utilize something that not many teams have, and they don't want to use it. They want to keep thinking... better.
The Detroit Lions...
thinking that they are... they remind me of like the Raiders in the 70s, that they have to throw the ball down the field, and that's the only way to matriculate yardage in this league. They have their offense so ass backwards with what they have, and this is why it's a clunky mess.
Yeah, I mean, because I think the Lions are the best team in football, and we'll see. I mean,
I think they are
defensively,
right
now
now.
now they have issues with no Aiden. That's big loss. That is a big
Huge loss.
That is a season-changing loss. So but right now, with Aiden Hutchinson, they were the best team in football in my estimation. And you talk about offensively specifically, and their offensive line. I don't know if it's better than the Eagles, and it might be just as good. It might be, but they
And
haven't
I'm not
added.
saying talent wise it's better. I'm saying it's utilized better.
I agree. It's utilized better. If they lose Decker, it's Decker, Glasgow, Ragnow, Zeitler, Sewell. Sewell's the best right tackle in football, but um, he's the superstar, Sewell. Zeitler's really good. Ragnow, I've been saying for years, I used to tell Jody, nobody knows who he is. He's better than Kelsey. I used to whisper.
Yeah.
He's been banged up a lot, but when they're healthy, but if they got to play Dan Skipper, the famous guy, that, Coyote Awasika's been in there. He can't even make the Eagles. So I don't know if they're better, but I think they're utilized better. And by the way, it's the same thing with the quarterback and the running backs. Is Saquon Barkley more talented than David Montgomery? Hell yeah. Is Saquon Barkley more talented than Jahmyr Gibbs in a well-rounded skill set? Hell yeah. I'd rather have that combination. I'd rather have that combination.
Yeah.
Well, I'd rather have the combination the way that they're using them. If you told me that the Eagles skill players were being used in that offense, they're going to have unbelievable seasons. It would be an unstoppable offense. And that goes to the play design and the play call. This is where this offense is not conducive to the talent you have. You're saying to me, it looks like the Eagles are saying, we have Jalen Hurts, and that makes us great. We're just going to throw the ball down the field and hope that the receivers can go one-on-one, which they can, but you're doing it every possession. You're taking a shot down the field every possession. We saw what happened in the game the other day. The ball's at the 45-yard line. They took the snap. They threw it to the 40. That's 5 air yards, and they scored a 45-yard touchdown. Why? They got the guy moving in motion. They let him catch it on the run, and then in the society that we live in, nobody wants to communicate. So the two idiots didn't talk to each other in the secondary, and you have free flowing. Number one, no communication on any secondary in the league. Number two, if you haven't noticed, Eagle head coach and coordinator, whoever's calling your plays, nobody can tackle. So throw the ball short and let A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith make people miss. I got news for you. Nobody can tackle in this league. Nobody. And yet you're trying to take shots down the field all game long. It is a gross misuse of all the talent you have. Throw the ball short and make people miss. It's a pretty simple concept. You know why? Because I watch it against you every week. You can't tackle. So why do you think anybody else can? It is unbelievable ignorance by this team's offense with the talent they have that they can score 20 freaking points in a game with that offensive talent. I don't care how many snaps you got in preseason, training camp, anywhere. The talent that they have by blind ignorance should score 20 points.
John, is this an organizational philosophy? Because me and John have talked about this so many times for the Eagles. They just want to pass the ball, Mike Gill. And what you're saying makes so much sense to me, but it goes against everything I'm told that the Eagles organization wants to do.
Well, I mean, yes, it is an organizational philosophy that you pass to win. You pass to get the lead, and you run to close out a game. Basically, is the philosophy, and that's not just Philadelphia. That's the vast majority of the league, including Detroit. By the way,
I don't know, man. Detroit imposes their will.
When things go well. And who knows? That's the best game of the week. And unfortunately, it's at 1:00 the same time as the Eagles. But Detroit's going into Minnesota. You got Ben Johnson, the wonderkin against Brian Flores. The great matchup. And you're going to see somebody get exposed. I don't know who, but you're going to see somebody get exposed to a certain degree. But I think, as I said with Aiden Hutchinson, I think Detroit is the best team in football. But yeah, I mean, they're good running the football, and they're good running the football because of their offensive line. But make no mistake about it, Jared Goff is an MVP candidate. He's the first guy in NFL history to not throw an incomplete pass, and they're constantly throwing the football down the field. Mike talks about some of this stuff. Look, that's a staple. That's a staple here. They don't execute it, unfortunately.
No, they don't. No,
I
but you know what
mean-
they do? And listen, this might be the quarterback. I had you on yesterday, John, and Kurt Warner brought this up. He says, I'm watching the Eagles' pass concepts. They're the same that they've been the last 3 years, regardless of the coordinator. So he's saying maybe it's the quarterback. Maybe it's the quarterback who can't do the things that Kellen Moore wants him to do, and that they're confined to this little box because of what the quarterback can do and can't do. Well, they can't run. Why? Detroit, they get up under center, they play action, and now, wow, just imagine the linebackers in the corners are looking in at the running back, and they say they might hand the ball to Saquon Barkley. Now, if Saquon Barkley's standing to my right, he can't get downhill, he can't get moving. I'm not all as worried about the play action with him. And then you get the ball. Amon-Ra St. Brown catches the ball in the middle of the field probably 3 to 4 times a game, and he just makes people miss. When you do those things, you are now giving so many different options that the safeties and the corners have to communicate on that messes them up.
I mean, you can point to Jalen Hurts with it, but I think they're also setting him up to fail. I mean, you could take the best passing quarterback in the league, and the way they're doing it with Jalen Hurts would make it an uphill battle. You come out and you throw go routes 4 times. I mean, they're letting Jared Goff get into the football game. As you mentioned, Mike, imposing their will with the offensive line, with their 2 running backs. They're making this impossible on Hurts, and Hurts isn't even a passing quarterback. This is a recipe for failure for the quarterback. And I'm critical of the quarterback. But they're also making it way harder on him.
Can I say, did this organization have the greatest stretch in history of 91 years playing this style of football, or did they not?
Yeah, but John, are they regressing since that point?
Well, sure, but a lot of that has to do with, and they got to figure it out. I'm not saying that. But to say it can't succeed, that's what you already saw it succeed.
Things change.
The people that say put Jalen Hurts under center.
Oh, I'm not saying that.
I mean, my God, what are we talking about? Here's the thing, and this is going to.
I'm not saying that you should, but I'm saying is that limiting what you can do offensively because that's not his strong suit.
Limiting Lamar Jackson with Derrick Henry? Do they run the football? No, it's not limiting you. You just got to do it a different way, a different style, a different way.
They also don't have A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith in their arsenal.
Now, here's my point. When they wanted to run Jared Goff out of Detroit and they were 0-8 or whatever the hell they were, when Dan Campbell, they wanted to run them both out of town.
Yeah.
If Jalen Hurts was on that team, they're probably 4-4. When you have everything perfect and everything is in situated, you got the great offensive line, you got the skill position. I'd rather have the Jared Goff style quarterback than Jalen Hurts style quarterback. I admit that. I'd rather have
what we have right now, right?
and that's gonna piss people off. But everything's got to be perfect. Everything's got to be perfect. If you're 0-6 level talent, you're going to go 0-7 and 0-8, and you're going to keep losing and losing and losing because that guy's not going to make plays for you. Whereas Jalen Hurts can do some different things and make plays for you.
Sure.
So
I mean, Anthony Richardson can make plays that Joe Flacco can't. Guess what?
Exactly.
I'll take Joe Flacco. That team's winning with Joe Flacco. Anthony Richardson can make a ton of plays, but that's just basically saying I have a lesser talented team, and therefore I have to utilize talent to mask.
Well, the point is you have to utilize the talent you have. And that's what the Eagles are trying. And that's why it looks similar with Nick Sirianni and Shane Steichen and Brian Johnson and Kellen Moore. And it'll look similar if you want to fire Nick and Kellen Moore and get somebody else next year. It'll look similar. If you hire a good coach, because good coaches are trying to utilize the talent they have to win a particular game.
Right.
That's why it looks similar.
And this is where I go back to the talent that they have that they're underutilizing is their offensive line. That's the talent that they have that they're underutilizing because they don't put enough value in, hey, we have the guys up front to win this game. You know, when Detroit beats Dallas, it's because they kicked their ass up front. Dallas is just beaten and whipped. So therefore, you can do everything you want because you utilized your biggest asset. Yes, Amon-Ra St. Brown is awesome. Jamison Williams, dynamic. Their running back tandem, great. But why? Because they have the ability to win up front, and they utilize that ability. Jared Goff's not great, but guess what? He can become great when you have the disposal of everything you want. And the Eagles want to almost force feed what they want to do at the beginning of a game. And now they're behind the 8 ball all game long, trying to just get that first down or that first score because they don't want to be, hey, we're going to take the ball and we're going to, believe me, John, you know me. I'm not some 1995 turn around and hand it off to Emmitt Smith kind of guy. But most teams in this league don't have what the Eagles have. They have an offensive line that they can ride. And now with the injuries, that changes probably a little bit. But this is a team that had no business being in the playoffs 3 years ago, I guess now. No business. They got there because they decided our offensive line is the star of this team. We're not good enough to be a playoff team. But if we utilize our best asset in this league, we can win. And that team stunk, and they won 9 games because they knew what their best asset was. This team right now, their best asset is their offensive line, and that opens up the assets that they have that are amazing assets.
Well, I would argue if you go back to the 2-5 start in 2021, it had more to do with not utilizing the offensive line. It had to do with taking they felt they put too much on Jalen Hurts' play too early. So again, it was all trying to take advantage of the quarterback skill sets. And that's
when I talk about the offensive line too, real quick, John, I'm saying their asset is as a run blocking, nasty offensive line as opposed to pass blocking. That, you know, most teams don't want to pass block. That's not your strength. Detroit's strength is run blocking, blasting you off the ball, and then that just wears down the pass rush.
Yeah, and I'm not trying to turn Jalen Hurts into Jared Goff because he's never going to be that. But there's got to be some way to find a middle ground to do what Mike is talking about while not taking Jalen Hurts and putting him under center, because I understand that's not going to be your best recipe to win. They're coming out and you know what? Right away. It's big play or bust for Jalen Hurts right now. It's got to be tough to succeed.
You can go, you can fire the coach after the season, go hire Clay Kubiak or whoever the hell is Kyle Shanahan's right-hand man. I think it's Clay Kubiak.
I wonder if it comes from upstairs, John.
And go get a play-action quarterback, and you can go play like the 49ers. You can go try it.
I'm not saying to do that. I'm just saying there's got to be a gray area that's better utilizing Jalen and the offensive line and the running game and the whole collection of talent that Mike is saying.
Yeah, it's getting the quarterback better at the things he's not great at, and they've been trying to do that pretty consistently. But to the point of Kurt Warner, and I'm glad Kurt said it because I've been saying it for weeks. Look, there's a theme here. There's a theme here, and the theme isn't Nick Sirianni. The theme is Jalen Hurts. Nick Sirianni has already changed offenses multiple times in his coaching career. Back in Indianapolis, from Andrew Luck to Jacoby Brissett to Phillip Rivers to here, first year, 2-5 to start, where they're throwing the football all over the place, trying to turn Jalen Hurts into this superstar player, to scaling it back to what Mike was talking about, making the offensive line the star. He's already changed offenses multiple times in his coaching career. But if people have that GPS program, they're getting there. It's got to do with the quarterback, not Nick Sirianni, not Shane Steichen, not Brian Johnson, not Kellen Moore. And that's not necessarily a bad thing because the quarterback's a good player and they won a lot of football. And if they're 6-2 3 weeks from now, I think everybody's going to be fine. But they're trying to build
it'll
an
be fine.
offense.
It depends on how those wins look. You know how it works. If they win 20-16 over the Giants and 17-7 over the Bengals, and you're still looking at an offense, you're saying ultimately, okay, you're winning these games, but can you beat? I can't believe we're saying this. The Minnesotas, the Washingtons, the Detroits, the San Franciscos.
I can't say that they'd be wrong, no. I mean, because look at what happened last year. You went 10-1, and then you collapsed once teams caught up to you, figured out how to play you. I mean, you got to the playoffs. The Bucs made you look like a JV team. We put, everybody blames the defense. We scored 9 points in the playoff game. You're not beating the Panthers with 9 points on the board.
Wow.
So if the wins are ugly, and you do get to 6-2 or 8-2 or 10-2, I'm not going to criticize the fans for being like, this isn't going to work, because we're going to get to the playoff teams. And as you just pointed out, the Minnesotas, the Detroits, the better teams in this league are going to look at us and they're going to blow us off the page.
Yeah, well, it's funny you say you're not winning against Carolina with 9 points. Not with Andy Dalton playing quarterback. Why? Because he can make the basic plays. He can make a simple play. That's where this team right now, they just can't make a simple.
I feel like the dam is breaking. I just right now, just across my feed, Fran Duffy used to work for the Eagles, the film guy. Now he works for PHLY, wrote, Jalen Hurts consistently attempts throws that have a low probability of completion. Why? What makes these throws harder than others? And why is it a consistent theme year after year, despite changes in the booth, coaching staff? Everybody's talking about it now, all of a sudden. It's been so obvious, as Vic likes to say, and I always say, it will become obvious. It is so obvious. People are finally waking up to it. Now, you utilize the players you have. If you're a good coach, if you're a bad coach, you try to turn Jalen Hurts into Brock Purdy. I don't know what,
but
the quarterback's got to get better.
Here's my question for both of you, because I agree, you're not going to turn Jalen into Brock Purdy, nor should you, and it's dumb. It would be dumb to do that. Is there a better way to do this using Jalen Hurts' skill set than what they are doing right now? There must be, in my opinion.
Yes, there's clearly a better way to do it.
That's what they got to find. I'm not trying to turn them into Brock Purdy,
but that's what they're trying to do every freaking day. Do you think they want them audible?
Doing that is by launching go routes from the first play of the game.
Who launched the go route?
Is it Jalen?
Yes.
Yeah,
well, then he needs to lose some of that autonomy he wanted so badly.
Yes, Kellen Moore, who says nothing. You guys can talk, and I'll try to pull it up. He says nothing ever says nothing. I'm going to read you his answer about the 3rd-1 play that ultimately turned into the sack and created the 57
genius.
Yeah, the 51-yard touchdown. He said it there for everyone to see. He's so boring, and people look over it and they don't pay attention. But he acknowledged it was an automatic. It was an audible. Same as the end of the game. One was unsuccessful. One was successful. Maybe, it's a very difficult thing to do when you have a quarterback who craves this autonomy and he's making wrong decisions.
Yeah.
So here's what Kellen said.
What did I tell you yesterday, John? The play was a terrible decision. It's a low percentage play, but it worked. So no one's really bringing it up. Whereas in the other game, Barkley dropped the pass and they're getting killed for it. If he catches that pass, everyone thinks it's a great call. That call down the field on 3rd and 1, if that pass, which is low percentage, is dropped, the clock stops, and you are probably talking about a game in which you just coughed up. Now, maybe not with Deshaun Watson.
So here's what Kellen said. Obviously he's protecting Jalen as much as he can. We just missed from a protection standpoint, and they did. That was a bad job by Saquon. Had somebody running down the middle of the field. That was Devontae Smith. And so felt like that was, you're only going to get one or two of those. And those are sometimes those automatics. That's an audible in coach speak that sit on the menu and you're waiting for the right time. He checked out of the play.
Yeah. Hey, I don't disagree with that. Like I said earlier, they had a play. They had the ball at the 45-yard line. They threw it 5 yards and they scored a touchdown. Jalen Hurts has to come to terms with it's not about him. It's getting the ball to these other players. They spent a ton of money on these receivers. Utilize them in the best way possible. Shooting them down the field once every possession, every time you get the ball, is not getting it done. So just say 1, 2, 3, bang. There you go, Smith. You make the play. It's like they have to score a 50-yard down the field touchdown. They scored a 45-yard touchdown by throwing the ball 5 yards the other day. That's your play right there. That's their play.
I agree. Simple mesh route, and they took it to the house. Instead, we're going on go routes all damn day. I'm wondering. So I don't know. Maybe it is more on Jalen Hurts. I mean, I think part of it is on Jalen Hurts. I'm just trying to bridge the gap. Like, there's got to be a better way. But if Jalen Hurts is continuing to audible out of the better way, then
the game is about setting something up down the line. And if I run that mesh route early in the game a handful of times, that throw I make later on down the field is a lot easier to make, because now I have everybody thinking they're going mesh, I'm going mesh. It makes it a more difficult play to go down the field if that is your first option all the time. And if you're unwilling to take the second option underneath, they very rarely go that route. But when they have, it has worked for them.
Yeah. But the Kellen Moore isn't calling go routes on 3rd and 1. If people don't understand that, I can't help them.
Yeah.
Jalen's got to be smarter than that.
He's smart when it works. It's worked a lot over the years.
As we talk a lot about, John, with everything, Vic Fangio's defense worked a lot, and then teams started to do more studies and figure it out, and then they things to now do things that make that defense what used to do things really well. They changed their ways. So teams look at what the Eagles did well, and they say, this is what you used to do well, so we're going to put a defense together when we play against you that takes some of that stuff away. You have to be able to evolve and do different things. So it's not to say, hey, every play has to be a mesh play. Of course not. I mean, eventually that gets taken away. Yeah, but if you are showing an unwillingness to do that at all, it makes what you really want to do much more difficult.
And by the way, the 3rd one was also the play that Nick Sirianni took credit for to take over the play calling for those worried about that. And then you have the offensive coordinator a couple days later explaining the whole situation. He's trying to protect the quarterback when he says, I took that out. He's trying to protect both.
Yeah, way more people are latching onto those words than I thought, John. I was reading around on YouTube, watching channels with, thousands and thousands of views. And I'm like, geez, they all really think that Nick called the defensive
They all think it. And that's why I don't know why Nick does it, but
yeah.
Well, I do know why he does it, but I don't think he realizes that people are taking him at his word.
Yeah.
Instead of just falling on the sword. I mean, the quarterback changed that play. You can go back and watch it. It's evident on the field. Just go back and watch it. The quarterback's changing the play right in front of your face.
All right, we got to let Mike get out of here. We went long, but this is an interesting conversation and one that is scary to look in the face, because you wonder what the hell is the answer if these problems are what is existing right now in a team that's really loaded with talent on the offensive side of the ball. So, Jay Perfect, thanks for the 99 cents, brother. Mike, great stuff, man. Appreciate you doing it as always. You You always get us talking, Mike, and that's why we love you. Make sure you guys follow Mike at Mike Gill Show and listen to him when you're down the shore, 97.3 ESPN. Download their app. Check out their website. Mike does a great job for them. Mike, thanks for joining today, man. We'll talk to you again soon.
See you guys.
Thanks, Mike.
Great stuff from Mike Gill. He always makes us think, and I love that. I thought he brought some great points today on the show. We're running out of time before BLG. We'll get to him. John, any last touches on that topic? I'm sure we'll get back into it with BLG a little bit because that's an interesting one, but I thought Mike said some good stuff. I thought you said some good stuff too, but it just highlights this problem. And it's like, okay, well, how do we fix that problem? Is there a fix to that problem? and then if you're an Eagle Negadelphia fan like me and you stare it in the face long enough, you're like, holy shit, are we fucked, Johnny Mac?
Yeah, well, it depends on your definition of fucked. But, for the people that think that they're a Super Bowl contender, I think that's not the case right now. Doesn't mean you can't develop into a Super Bowl contender. It's better to get, play your best football late. But right now, the Eagles' way to win is to out-talent people. And that's really their way of winning before when they did have the run. And I just don't think the talent is where it was before, at least from a depth standpoint. And then when you start the injuries, and now we're talking about injuries again with Jordan Milaida, Dallas Goedert, and I'm talking about the offensive side of the football. But as far as the scheme and that type of stuff, I mean, I'm getting to the point where I'm thinking they fucked themselves because they're paying too much deference to the quarterback.
And when you say that, you mean they're giving them too much autonomy?
Not only that's part of it, but part of it is that they want to make him happy. Yeah, similar to the Sixers with Joel Embiid. They want to make him happy. And that's not how you run a team. No offense to your personal happiness, but this is bigger than you.
Yeah, well, listen to fucking Tom Brady. You want to be happy, go to Disney World with your family.
Well, yeah, I wasn't thinking of Tom, but yeah, what he said about that, he got fired up about that. Yeah, it's you shouldn't be changing third one plays in that situation. Shouldn't be doing it. Should be getting the first down, extending the sticks, and then maybe something works. You put yourself and that now that's a footnote. Imagine if they lose that game. They're coasting. They're probably going to get a field goal. It's probably going to be 13-3 against Cleveland, against an offensively limited team. You're probably coasting to a win because Saquon was a bigger part of that than Jalen. But that was a poor decision that put Saquon in a position where he made that mistake. So there's a bunch of butterfly effects going on here.
Right.
And imagine if they lost that game. Now it's just a footnote. That was one of the worst sequences in recent Eagles history. That end of half that resulted in the Myles Garrett blocked field goal.
It was brutal. It was brutal. Let's get to our commercial break. Great conversation there with Mike Gill, Johnny Mac. Good touches on it there. We're going to talk to BLG. I got to hear what BLG is thinking on this because this is some interesting stuff when you're talking about this offense, Jalen Hurts, the autonomy at the line, and all sorts of stuff. So we'll get into that coming up next. Brandon Lee Gouton. Appreciate everybody being here on Birds 365. Hit that like button if you're here on the live chat. Appreciate all of you guys. I see a bunch of people in there as always. So thanks for that. Let's get to our commercial break. Before I do that, BetUS, everybody, our newest sponsor here on Birds 365, sponsoring us for the football season. Check them out. You can look at your screen now, and there's a big promo code on the screen, YouTube 150, and that gives you 150% sign-up bonus on your very first deposit, and then you get 125% on your second and third deposits, all up to $2,000. So deposit less and bet with more at BetUS. Go to betus.com.pa. That's betus.com.pa. They have the fastest payouts in the industry, 24/7 customer support, and you'll even get your own custom account manager to help you make your bets. So go check them out today. Happy to have them sponsoring us here on JAKIB Sports. We'll be back in 3 minutes, everybody, with BLG from Bleeding Green Nation.
If you missed any of today's show on the JAKIB Media channel, listen to the podcast on your way home. Available on YouTube, Apple, and Spotify.
He's blocked well and tries to cut through the middle. Oh!
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on Sports Grid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on Sports Grid.
Score and save at Southeastern PA and Delaware with Colony Pools this football season, and let the experts close your pool with a custom Merlin safety cover in green for the birds. And if you join our Winter Watch team, we'll give you another 20% off, and Colony Pools will handle it all. Keep your tiles on your pool, not in your pool. Fly with Colony right now, Birds fans. Visit flywithcolony.com.
Hi everybody, my name's Jason Lombardi. I'm an inspector at DryTech. At DryTech we offer three major services, the first one being basement waterproofing. The second service we offer is foundation and structural repairs. And then the third service that we offer is mold remediation. If you feel you are having a waterproofing issue, give DryTech a call or check us out online.
Heading down the shore. Have a ball once more.
Here, imaginations run wild and time stands still. Because here, you can find the best of the Jersey Shore, all on one 5-mile island. So leave the old you behind and get lost in the woods.
Wild, wild, wildwood.
Plan your stay in the Wildwoods today.
EAGLES, Eagles.
Welcome back in, everybody, to a Wednesday edition of Birds 365 here on JAKIB Sports. Joined now by Brandon Lee Gouton of Bleeding Green Nation. Give him a follow on X at Brandon Gouton. Read all his work at Bleeding Green Nation. BLG, welcome to the show, man. How you doing on this Wednesday morning?
Thanks, guys. I imagine we have a lot to talk about.
Yeah. You know what? It's funny, BLG. We haven't even talked about Nick's weird behavior. I guess we've gotten past that, at least for the moment. But I do want to hear your thoughts coming off the press conference. What are your first thoughts when you were ingesting it all?
Yeah, that was probably the most bizarre press conference I've seen, John. I kind of felt uncomfortable sitting in the Eagles press box or the media press conference room after the game. It just felt kind of really bizarre and strange, and the tenor and really just the totality of everything between, the shaved head itself, whatever, but like between that and the interaction with the crowd and the press conference and the game, just all of it together, it just felt very bizarre to me, very surreal in some kind of ways too, and strange, very strange.
Yeah,
that sums it up. Yeah, I thought they were rebooting the Surreal Life for old MTV fans or VH, whatever that stupid reality show was. But yeah, it was one. I agree with you, and I've been to a lot of these things. It was, and you could see there were two Eagles executives that who I'm talking about that are around Nick Sirianni a lot, and I don't even think they were comfortable with what was going on at all. But I do think it's kind of more back into, what's going on with this offense for whatever reason. Recently, Kurt Warner evidently said something. I think there's a sea change. People realizing Yeah, there's a group that thinks, oh, this is not Kellen Moore's offense. This is Nick Sirianni stepping it, and he doesn't help the matter by taking, the sword and jumping on the shield for everybody. But people are starting to realize, hey, this looks the same. Whether Nick's calling the plays, Shane's calling the plays, Brian's calling the plays, Kellen Moore's calling the plays, at least from a passing concept, not success. They've had tremendous success at times, but the passing concepts themselves, they look similar. To me, I've been on this for a number of weeks. They're doing what the quarterback's comfortable with, and they're building as they should as NFL coaches, trying to build an offense around the strengths of the quarterback. Where are you with that whole, oh, this is not Kellen Moore's offense narrative?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's enough people who, I trust that grind the tape. We have our own Johnny Page at Bleeding Green Nation who has been saying that for a couple of weeks now. I was reading ESPN, Ben Solak, a former BGN guy, also basically said, this is not Kellen Moore's offense. This is Jalen Hurts. This is a Jalen Hurts offense. So, yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot to that. And, I think Sirianni, obviously, based on how he's talked, going back to the spring and, marrying the offenses and everything, and just the fact that there's so many, of his assistants who were here before Kellen Moore, Jeff Stoutland, Kevin Patullo, Jason Michael, and so on. Obviously there's going to be, I feel like, more than 0% carryover from what they were doing before. But yeah, I mean, I think ultimately, if you're looking for the biggest common denominator, it's probably Jalen Hurts. And it makes sense to cater your offense to your quarterback to some extent, but at the same time, if we're going into what Nick Sirianni says about a wise man avoiding all extremes, and you look at some of the biggest trends in football, and for example, like play action, being like a really easy button more often than not for quarterbacks. And if you're not incorporating that at all, I feel like you have to figure that out, how you can make that work for the quarterback better.
How much of it is, are you putting on Jalen? Because I'm looking at this and I'm like, I'm not trying to turn Jalen Hurts into Brock Purdy or Jared Goff, but you look at these other teams and the way they run, and it's just like, we look nothing like that. At times, I'm like, well, are we even in the same league? And we have this humongous payroll on offense. It's $175 million offense, BLG, and we're just struggling immensely. And I'll point to the first quarter scoring as the best example of it. 3 go routes in the first 2 drives. It's like, is that all on Jalen Hurts? There's got to be a better way to bridge his skill set with a different type of offense that allows him to get into the game better. How do you see that, with Jalen Hurts?
It's not really like even an offense when like that performance from Sunday, when it's just like, okay, hard completion to AJ Brown or kind of nothing. Like that itself shouldn't be an offense. Like either we have this, difficult play work, or we don't, and it's just, then we have nothing going. There's no kind of rhythm or easy completions or working the middle of the field. Like that doesn't seem like an offense to me. It seems like you'd want a better flow than that. So I think they have to figure out, how they can get some of those things going. And going back to training camp, I thought the first couple of days from Jalen Hurts looked really good. The Eagles were doing a lot of tempo in addition to that motion we saw more of. And I think we saw a little bit of that on Sunday, and Nick talked about that a little bit. I'd like to see more of that. It's not about, being Chip Kelly and doing that all over again, but I think, maybe getting into tempo, I think that that lets Hurts get into a rhythm a little bit more.
I agree, but that takes away from the motion.
Sure.
And then people get upset because there's no motion. And as you mentioned, the play action, 2 plays of play action. Now, I'm always hesitant to quote these stats, and in this case, it's true media, but I don't know. Like, are they talking about traditional play action? Because there's RPO play action, there's play action from the pistol, and blah blah blah. I don't even know exactly what they're talking about. But if you look at the history of Kellen Moore as a coach, he uses play action quite a bit in his history. And he's all of a sudden, he's not using it now all that much, which I think is a fair way to frame it. Is that? And again, it goes back to the quarterback versus the head coach, because a lot of people are on this narrative that, oh, somehow Nick's saying, hey, don't use play action.
Mm-hmm.
And I go to that specific situation, which it was mainly Saquon Barkley, but not getting out of bounds and then missing the pass protection. But it was 3rd and 1. And Kellen Moore never tells us anything, BLG, but he told us that was an automatic. In other words, the quarterback checked out of the play, and he's trying to hit Devontae Smith deep down the field on a 3rd and 1. And the butterfly effect to that is Jim Schwartz is blitzing, JOK's coming, Saquon doesn't pick it up, big sack, 57-yard field goal, Myles Garrett, rest is history. That's the quarterback. It's not the head coach. It's not the offensive coordinator. Kellen Moore says nothing. And he had to admit that was an audible because it was so evident from the tape that Jalen Hurts was changing the play. I don't know how to fix this, BLG.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's in that specific moment, yeah, that's obviously on the quarterback. I mean, I think that whole end of game or end of first half sequence was botched by multiple people. Like, I think Nick should have taken a timeout after the Browns or after Jalen Carter sacked Deshaun Watson. And instead of letting the clock run down to, past the 2-minute warning with the field goal, you could take a timeout and give yourself like 30, 40 extra seconds there, especially when you had all 3 to burn still. And then if you took the 1, you would have had 2 in the 2-minute warning there. And then maybe Saquon's not feeling like he's in a rush, in that situation.
Why is he feeling he's in a rush, by the way? I don't want to give a pass to Saquon. Why they still have 3 timeouts?
Sure, yeah.
60 seconds.
Right.
Why is he feeling rushed? He just doesn't know the situation.
Exactly. Yeah, and that's a problem. I think some of that is obviously in the player has to be accountable, but also I think the coaching, if players aren't regularly aware of things, which kind of seems like that's been a trend at times, that's a problem there too. You didn't even need to get out of bounds. They could have turned upfield and could have taken their first time. They had 3 timeouts. The first one they used was when the clock was already stopped.
Yeah.
After
that play
where he gets out of bounds. So I think that was mismanaged in a lot of ways, but certainly there. And then I don't know, maybe I don't know how this works in terms of the actual process, but I think in that 3rd and 1, it should be there is no audible. It's we're doing the brotherly shove. We're getting a first down. We can take a timeout. They shouldn't have had to burn the timeout after the Saquon one. So I'm going to assume they didn't.
But they still had 2. They could have done it.
Right.
They could have.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
So I mean, I just and you saw them get cute with that. Obviously, didn't work out. Different kind of thing. But in the Saints game, if you have that in a different situation a little bit, but if you have the timeouts and you have a yard to go and the brotherly shove's been unstoppable, like it was looking, I just don't overthink it.
Yeah. Yeah, that was a bad. If that was a loss, we'd be talking about that sequence for years.
A 10-point swing.
Yeah. Luckily for them, the footnote is that they got out of there with a win. And that's where we are as a whole, 3-2. This is a bad division. I think the Eagles are still the favorite to win the division, but I don't think they're a Super Bowl contender. Is that where you are with this team? I think people overrate the talent on this team. I think they really have good offensive starters, top tier. When their 11 guys are on the field, that's one of the best offenses in football. The rest of the roster, I think it's like everybody else. And that's the NFL, parity driven, blah, blah, blah. Is this talent a little bit overrated in your mind, BLG?
I don't think so as much offensively. I think the offense gives them a chance. And I think that unit has the potential to click talent-wise. Again, I have my questions about the coaching, but you're asking about the talent. I think the talent there has a chance to be good enough. The defense, obviously, not as much, I don't think. There's too many questions there. Although if, the offense carries them, maybe they could get by. But I guess I'm thinking about it this way. Eagles fans are certainly relishing in the Dallas Cowboys getting stomped by the Detroit Lions. I mean, imagine if the Eagles are playing the Detroit Lions right now. How do you think that's going to go? I don't think very well.
Oh, boy. Well, maybe that's a big loss, Aiden
Sure.
Hutchinson. So we'll see. But I think Detroit with Aiden Hutchinson was the best team in football. I think they're the best team in football, and we'll see how they're able to persevere. The Eagles, all I meant by that is they're really good. Their top level talent on offense is tremendous, but the depth isn't there. Now we're talking about Jordan Mailata being out for hopefully it's only a couple weeks. Do you have to move Mekhi Becton, the left tackle? Do you have to put Tyler Steen in? Are they going to try to persevere with Fred Johnson? Grant Calcaterra played well in the absence of Dallas Goedert. I don't want to see that for multiple weeks. Grant Calcaterra and Jack Stoll. I just don't think overall, when you talk about 1 through 53, I think the Eagles are very top heavy. And we already saw with AJ, Devontae, and Lane. Look, you can't replace players like that, but you should have a little bit more. And maybe that happened with Grant Calcaterra. I don't know. I think I'm starting to look at this team and say, boy, the upside to me is playoffs and maybe a playoff win, but I don't see the upside being legit Super Bowl contender.
Yeah, I mean, I think part of that is like the perception coming in is still we're all kind of, they just were in the Super Bowl a couple of years ago. You kind of have that shine still on you to some extent where we're thinking about that still, but in reality, it's been a long time since then, and a lot of different things have gone on. And yeah, I think that's the sobering look. And I think, yeah, they're more in that realm of probably like a wild card kind of team. And like you said, maybe they win the division. We'll see what happens with Washington. I think the Commanders are still going to be a force here, and they've, I think, an easy schedule. But my expectation heading into the year was that like maybe they win a playoff game and probably just that. And I still think that's kind of what I'm around.
Bill G, you think the offense or the defense is a bigger problem right now? I mean, I'm looking at the games, and yeah, I understand the defense isn't this world-beating defense, but you give up 16 points to the Browns, you give up 12 points to the Saints, you give up, 22 points to the Falcons. Reminder, the Browns scored on the block kick, so it was really like 9 points they gave up. Now, they're not a world-beating offense. I understand that, but, I mean, this is an offense that's $175 million of payroll, BLG. They got to score more points out there if they want to win football games. I get the defense isn't, that good, but are they a bigger problem than the offense that I think is drastically underperforming so far?
Yeah, I would say if you want to frame it as the bigger problem, I'd say the offense is the bigger problem. I would say the defense is worse than the offense, but I think ultimately what matters more for where this team wants to go, yeah, the defense I think just has to be not terrible, and I think the offense has to be really good. And I think that's the formula they're going to have. They're going to seriously going to contend, and I don't know if the offense can fully get there. Again, I think the talent has the potential that it exists, but I don't think the whole operation, coaching, quarterback, offensive coordinator, all the scheming is really helping maximize this talent. As you see in this performance that we're coming off of, it's hard to say that. I will say with the defense, like kind of a funny game where, yeah, they didn't allow a touchdown. They only gave up 9 points, but like Deshaun Watson had his best passer rating of the season. He had like 11 straight completions at one point.
Yeah.
He had his best yards per attempt mark this season. He had his second highest completion percentage this season. It was the one of 2 games where he didn't turn the ball over this season. The Browns had their second highest yardage output as an offense, and they averaged 4.6 yards per play, and that was over the 3.8 they had entering this game. So like it's funny because like certainly it wasn't a terrible defensive performance, but I'm not really feeling like inspired by that and feeling like they've turned a corner.
Yeah, the defense is tough because I think Vic is starting to show up, and I think he is a really good coordinator, and he's going to get more out of what they probably should. And as you point out, some of those deficiencies, I thought it took him way too long to pull the trigger on Cooper DeJean. That was positive. But boy, we're back to Kobe Dean has been awful, PLG. And particularly in space. And I asked Vic about that yesterday. He had to admit it to a certain degree. His PFF grade is atrocious. It's just And by the way, for all the talk about the ups and Zach Baldwin looked tremendous in the opener, and then he had a bad game, then he had a good game. He's not great. Is this just the chickens coming home to roost to Howie Roseman? I mean, you don't pour assets in a position, you get what the Eagles have at linebacker.
Yeah, I think Bond, there's like a chance he could be better by the end of the year, a lot like more than relative than the average player, just because he is newer to what he's doing basically, and there's a chance that maybe he settles in and and just plays well more consistently because we've seen him do it. And if he gets more reps, maybe he kind of just really puts that together and pieces it together. So I feel okay about his outlook, or even just because even if there are highs and lows, he gives you some highs like that. You'll take that. You'll take the good, what you get out of that. Whereas with Nakobe, yeah, I just think, going back to what we saw in training camp, there were obviously, good moments, but I think all of it's really just more about like being a downhill kind of player. And it's 2024 and you don't really have, like two down linebackers in the NFL anymore. And I think Nakobe, ideally could be more of a situational role player, like as a two down linebacker. But I just don't really think that's, again, realistic what you need out of a top two linebacker in terms of snaps played, which Eagles are only playing those two guys. It's not like they're rotating anyone else in there. Yeah.
How far do you go at this level? Because Zach's fine. I mean, he's playing, hopefully he gets better, but he's been okay. How far do you go this level with Nakobe Dean before you say, all right, let's try Trot or even Ben Van Sumeren? How far can you take it?
I think they will take it further than they should, but I think why not see more of a rotation? I feel like that's something you can do. Teams rotate linebackers. That's really not all that uncommon. I know Vic Fangio he said that wasn't ideal. You want to land on two guys, but I mean, I think at a certain point you just have to kind of give Jeremiah Trotter Jr. or, like you said, Ben Van Sumeren some opportunities to get on the field here, and I think you can rotate that and see how it goes. And if they're terrible or they can't play, then fine, go back to Nakobe. But give them a chance, see what you've got.
BLJ, big change here with Jordan Mailata missing a couple games. What do you want to see him do? Do you think moving Becton to that left tackle is worth it? You think, is that too big of a risk to change two positions on your offensive line? How would you play this if you're the Eagles?
I think what they are going to do is give Fred Johnson at least one more crack at this going into the game and see how that goes, and then maybe adjust from there. I'm gonna be a little bit more willing, and I like Fred Johnson as like what he is, maybe as what he's been this year. The Eagles have won both games, that he's had to fill in. I think that's something that makes sense from the standpoint of, okay, you don't want to change two positions in game. It's just a 1-for-1. He can help get you through the game. But I think going into the game and having teams able to game plan for that a little bit more, like we saw against the Bucks where he really struggled, I think I'd more strongly consider changing two positions, which I think would be less of a deal with the whole week of preparation for that, and moving Mekhi Becton out to left tackle where he certainly can play and was even repping earlier this offseason when Milaida was missing some time and was at OTAs there. So, yeah, I would go with that. And and then I like what I've seen out of Tyler Steen. I think like that's just the better. I think you're getting your better players on the field when you have both Becton and Steen out there. Again, I wouldn't do that in game because that's changing too many parts. But going into a game, I think that's more worth considering.
Yeah, I'm in the short term. If it's short term, and Jordan pretty much said 2 weeks or a couple weeks. Nick mentioned that. Boy, it looked bad to me, man. Yeah. If you would have said that was a 2-week injury, I was expecting more. And I'm sort of there. If it's like 4 weeks, I'm making the change. Mm-hmm. Becton's my left tackle. Tyler Steen's coming in. This particular week, you don't worry about the New York Giants much about anything, but poor Tyler Steen, if he's got to go in there and deal with Dexter Lawrence, and everybody's going to say, hey, Tyler Steen stinks, not realizing the level Dexter Lawrence is playing at. So it's going to be interesting. It's going to be an interesting decision for Jeff Stoutland, and we'll be looking at that at practice today to see who starts in individual Stoutland's, at least one of the few coaches that will not try to blow smoke up your what. And that'll be interesting. With Slay, I think a lot of fans would be excited, to be honest, if he's forced not to play. I think that's a very bad situation, especially if Malik Neighbors is coming back for the Giants. All indications he probably will be. Dynamic rookie receiver. Are you more comfortable with Isaiah Rodgers if he's got to play 70 snaps or Kaylee Ringo?
Yeah, I like Isaiah Rodgers a little bit more at this point. I think he's shown a little bit more to me. Keely's done some good things. I think he's also had some struggles too. And clearly the Eagles have been, turning to Rodgers here as well. Went to, Keely got in the game after Rodgers got a little banged up at that one point. But yeah, I think Isaiah Rodgers is the better option right now.
BLG, I'm gonna force you to rank the blame right now on offense, all right? Because I got big problems with this offense. They're not reaching expectations. I don't think they're nearly as good as they should be. Jalen Hurts, Kellen Moore, Nick Sirianni. Who's to blame most for this offense right now?
I mean, I think when you're the quarterback's making $250 million, it's not a small factor. It's a big factor, and I think it's easy to say, and he's the one literally touching the ball every time. So I think big picture, conceptually, even though I thought, he had a nice game after the 0-for-5 start, it was 16-20 after that. I think there are some big picture concerns and issues here that I'll put Hurts at number one for that. I'll put Sirianni number two. I know he's not calling the plays, but I think there are problems with, the slow starts, obviously. And I think, even if Kellen Moore is contributing to that with play calls that aren't great or whatever, it's on the CEO head coach to kind of realize that this is a pain point for us and help come up with answers. And I don't know that Nick Sirianni has answers for much, if anything.
The defense started fast, BLG. Yeah, we're not talking about the defense, Nick. Talk about the surreal press conference. I mean, come on, dude.
Tell Jeffrey Lurie that. Tell Jeffrey Lurie that the defense started fast.
Yeah, right.
Now Nick says everything has his name on it, so he'll fall on the shield. Are you surprised how many people believe that nonsense? Like Vic had to shut it down, and Kellen's explaining it was an audible. Why do so many people believe that Nick Sirianni is taking? And by the way, he's only taking over the disastrous play calls, and they think he's not protecting the coaches and the players. Do you get a lot of that over belief? Because I get a lot of that, BLG.
I think part of the reaction is just like, even if, believe it or not, it's just so bizarre. Again, going back to the bizarre thing. Yeah. Earlier, for him to say the thing about Vic Fangio, why would he even bring that up?
I know.
It's like a weird,
unprompted.
That's a weird thing.
It's not like anybody asked him.
Yeah.
He creates his own unforced errors.
Exactly. And that's a big problem. I think a lot of it's just like and the problem with it too, is just like how disingenuous it is, right? Because it's just like,
oh yeah.
Okay, we can see this is like hard to believe, and it just you're kind of treating everyone like we're dumb here. So yeah, nothing about it. It seems like great message. My big picture takeaway, to get it back into the Nick, the big picture thing for me is just like, this doesn't seem like a guy who's really like in control right now and like is leading the team in a very like composed and like competent kind of way. I think that's kind of the big issue for me.
Yeah.
No doubt. BLJ, thanks for joining the show today, man. I know it's early. You obviously reserve the right to change this at any moment on Bleeding Green Nation. Make sure you guys go follow BLJ at Brandon Goutwin and read him on Bleeding Green Nation. You think the Birds squeak out a win here? First NFC East game of the year. I'll say this. Giants are a better team, I think, than the Browns. Do the Eagles get a win this weekend?
They certainly are better than the Browns, which is not saying much, but it is true. The Eagles are 1-7 in their last 8 games as favorites. That's against the spread. They don't cover. They just don't. They don't cover when they're favorites. They're down to 3-point favorites right now. I'm seeing here. I'm going to take them to win because the Giants are also missing Andrew Thomas here. That's a obviously really big injury for them. This Eagles defensive line showed some signs of life. I'm not saying the pass rush is fixed, but maybe there's something there where they can take advantage of another not great offensive line here. Never really been a huge Daniel Jones fan. So I don't think it's going to be pretty. Yeah, what's not to love? I don't think it's going to be pretty, but I do think Saquon could have a really big day against his former team, the revenge game. And I'll say the Eagles win like on a last-second field goal. So they'll push. They won't cover, but they'll push.
That'll inspire some confidence in the fan base. A last-second field goal win over the New York Football
Jake Elliott.
Giants.
Yeah. Hopefully it's not 57. Yeah. I mean, by the way, last one real quick, because I threw this out there and I'm like, if Nick Sirianni's not getting fired, but if Nick Sirianni walked into Jeffrey Lurie's office today and flipped him off and said, you know what, I'm done with this city, and they were forced to elevate somebody, I think everybody says Kellen Moore. I would say Vic Fangio, but I'm starting to think after, you know who the best communicator is? Michael Clay. Nobody talks about it. What do you like? Michael Clay, head coach, Philadelphia Eagles.
It's funny. Elliot Shore-Parks said that to me when we were talking about this.
Oh, really?
Yeah, we
had a fan on Jacob, Lucius the Show. Got to give him a shout out. He came on the post game show with me. He's
all
like,
right.
I thought that guy is thorough.
All right. I'll defer to Elliot. I thought it was first.
Well, you got to get the special teams mistakes cleared up first. I think.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
I don't know. I don't know if I could put Myles Garrett jumping an offensive line.
But well, that's not his fault. I mean, he should have the people prepared, but. I just think it's a communication position. I think he's the best communicator by far of that group.
I think it all depends on the timing, right? Like of the season where like, you know, if it's now, I think they would want to, if they were going to do it early, I think they would want to get a look at Kellen Moore for a trial run. If they're going to do it later, I think it's kind of like, hey, like with Pat Shurmur, let's just get through the rest of this season, whatever. Let's just make it, you know, and finish the year out. So I think it kind of depends when it happens, if it happens.
And by the way, you don't usurp either side of the football. They stay with their little domain.
There you go.
And you elevate the communicator. That's my thought process. But Nick Sirianni's not getting fired. I don't want to get everybody excited. He's not getting fired.
I don't see it happening either. BLG, thanks for joining the show today, man. Make sure you guys follow him on Twitter at Brandon Gouton and read him on Bleeding Green Nation. Great stuff today, man. We'll talk to you again next week. All right, brother.
See you guys.
Thanks, bud.
Good stuff from BLG there. John, we only got a couple minutes left here to play, and we got a bunch of super chats to roll through. Great stuff from BLG. Great stuff from Mike Gill. Some interesting conversation today, John. I would agree with you that there seems to be a sea change, I think was the word you used, and I think that was a pretty good one. In terms of people coming to grips maybe with what the problems are with this team. And that's a good thing because you want to identify the problems so you know how to fix them. Not that we are going to fix them, but hopefully the team knows what they are so they can fix them. Your thoughts just on the conversation today with our two guests.
Yeah, I think people are starting to wake up to what, and I don't even know if it is a problem, just the realization of what's going on. Because they, like I said, they won a lot of football games with this particular quarterback. So I think everyone assumes that it's negative. It's not negative. It's just trying to take advantage of his particular skill set. They have to do a better job of that. You don't do that. My only point is you don't do that by motion and play action and all the nonsense and all the eye candy, as Jim Schwartz will call it. You do it by utilizing what he does well. And right now I'm getting a Joel Embiid feel. They're trying to make the quarterback happy. And it's got to get back to, he's never shown I don't want to say Jalen Hurts is that type of player that needs to be catered to. In fact, he's often been the obvious and he's accepted hard coaching. I think they got to get back to some difficult coaching, to be honest.
We'll see if they do that. Appreciate everybody in the chat right now. Got some good super chats, John, I want to get to before we get out of here today. Always appreciate anybody that checks in with the super chat. The support for the channel goes a long way, and we do appreciate that. Let's get to a couple super chats here. Caleb Brandon dropped a bunch, Brian Pumper, and Bird Gang. So thank you guys. We'll roll through these real quick here at the end of the show. Caleb Brandon checks in. I don't care who calls plays, long as we run on first and keep the offense in rhythm. Like the second part of 21 and the 22 season. harping on it because I know it's important. One more, and then he followed up. No team is talented enough to overcome poor coaching. So those are from Caleb Brandon. Thank you, Caleb. John, your response to Caleb.
Yeah, I don't know. If you do everything 100% of the time, it's not good coaching. So, if the wording was every time, no. I mean, that's anything. That's called a tendency, and people will figure it out very quickly. So it's not as easy as just saying, "Oh, we're going to run the football on first down." If you do that consistently, it's not gonna be very effective. So, I mean, I think you have to be a little bit more. I think that's the definition of poor coaching. A little bit more open-minded. Doesn't mean you shouldn't lean on it more, but that's a big difference.
Yep, no doubt. Caleb, thank you for the super chats, my man. Appreciate those. Brian checks in. Brian Pumper says, Jalen Hurts throw anything other than a go ball challenge, ... Impossible. The guy went from conservative and coachable to high maintenance. QB1 equals QB none. Thank you for that super chat, Brian. John, your response, Brian's out on the quarterback.
Well, I do think, his propensity is to go too much to the go route when he audibles. But, yeah, I do think they need to get back to a little harder coaching and saying, let's understand the situation, particularly in that end of half scenario, that was handled very poorly, not by a lot of people, as BLG just pointed out. The timeouts were not utilized correctly. The running back didn't know the situation. So it wasn't just the quarterback, but the quarterback ultimately is the one who audibled out of the 3rd and 1 play and was looking for a downfield throw. Now, if they pick up the blitz a little bit better, again, the running back, it's 4th and 1. In a worst case scenario, you either kick a more makeable field goal if Myles Garrett probably doesn't block it, or you push it and keep things going, try to get a few more yards or try to take a shot maybe in a better situation. A lot of things went wrong there, but the trump card was the quarterback, and he made a bad decision. And he made a bad decision at the end of the game when he worked. Again, good decisions don't necessarily result in good outcomes. Bad decisions don't necessarily result in bad outcomes, but the more consistently you make a bad decision, the more consistently you're going to get bad results. And there needs to be tougher coaching to some of these situations. I would agree with that.
Yep, good response.
But I don't think Jalen Hurts is, and I made the Joel Embiid comparison, so I'm probably not helping. I don't think he's that type of player.
I don't either, but I think that's the type of environment he's in.
I think they're catering to him, and I don't know why.
Great response there, Brian. Thank you for the super chat there. Next super chat, back to Caleb. Caleb, thanks again. He says, John sees no depth. I see the poor use of depth. Caleb, thank you for the $2 super chat, my man, but I don't really agree with you. John, response to that.
Yeah, Grant Calcaterra did a nice job. Long term, do I think he's a capable a high level tight end 2 in this league compared to other tight end 2s? No. I
just have a problem with like it's football. There's going to be injuries. You're going to need to, like, players are going to have to step up eventually.
I mean, I would counter with, who are you excited about? Jahan Dotson had a big opportunity, and he got a little bit more involved, and that was a positive.
Yeah, but he did nothing with both AJ and Devontae out.
Well, exactly. That's what I'm saying. I mean, where's this high level depth? That's what I'm asking. Moro Ojoma's doing a nice job.
Yeah, he's been good.
They don't have good starters at linebacker, never mind depth. Maybe they have better depth. I've talked about that. It's all the same. I don't think people are going to be happy if Slay doesn't play this weekend. I think they think they're going to be happy, but they're not going to be happy.
Yep. A couple more super chats we got to roll through, so be quick here.
Yeah. So yeah, I don't think there's a lot of depth on this team.
couple more from Caleb, and then we got 2 more after that. Caleb checks in again. Appreciate it, Caleb. He says, saying Hurts is number one problem after watching play calls last 2 seasons when coaches are paid to put players in position. I don't get how is that ignored. And then he followed up and said, motion matters for pre-snap read. Ask Shane in 22. But to answer the first one, I mean, Caleb, thank you for the $5 super chat. My question to you would be, what do you have to say then about Jalen audibling to some of the plays that have been criticized?
And by the way, Jalen makes $255 million, a lot more than the coaches.
Yeah, Nick's making what, 5, 6,
Yeah,
7?
the money's not relevant.
Yeah, agreed.
Um,
Your response to this one, Joe?
Yeah, as far as pre-snap motion, look, it's dependent on the quarterback. I always say it all the time. Phillip Rivers doesn't like pre-snap motion. It's important for certain quarterbacks. Aaron Rodgers doesn't like pre-snap motion. I got a lot of people criticizing Aaron Rodgers, and think about the hubris to do that. Well, Aaron Rodgers needs more pre-snap motion. He doesn't want it because he can figure out things formationally from things that other people can't pick up. Some quarterbacks, it's very important. Some are not. And that's the point. You try to utilize what your particular quarterback wants. And I go back to Nick's time in Indianapolis. The offense was a hell of a lot different with Andrew Luck and Jacoby Brissett than it was with Phillip Rivers because Phillip didn't want it because Phillip was really high level football IQ and he could figure out things formationally. Aaron Rodgers, I mean, like I said, the hubris of some of these film wonks to say that they know better. I mean, that's off the charts. But again, it's dependent on what the quarterback is comfortable with. It is evident now through 4 coordinators that they have scaled back for the quarterback and what the quarterback is comfortable with.
No doubt. One more follow-up from Caleb. He says, that's on him. I'm aware of the audibles, too much to put in chat for more clarity, but overall, we behind the sticks too much. You guys are great. See you. Caleb, big thanks for the support. And I see what you're saying. Definitely behind the sticks. I'd like to see more running too, because we talked about that earlier. I think that would help Jalen Hurts, but I don't know if they're going to go that route. Let's go to 2 more we got left. Johnny Mac. Brian checks in. Boy, Brian, you're hard on this team, my man. Brian Pumper checks in. Slay's going to dodge MetLife anyways, J Mac. Surprised you beat writers haven't picked up
he
on
hates
this.
it there. I talk about it all the time. I've talked about it a million times. No, well, he legitimately got hurt, but yeah, he hates playing there. He hates it. Everybody hates playing.
Everybody.
There,
Reporters hate going there. Merrill Reese hates calling games there. Everybody hates MetLife.
But he does not like playing. But he's played there many times. So yeah, I'm not.
And last one, Bird Gang checks in. Appreciate it, Bird Gang. He says the sooner fans realize Hurts is an average quarterback at best, the easier it'll be to expect slow and bad offense. Bird
I
Gang,
don't think he is an average quarterback.
On your response.
Yeah, I don't think he's an average quarterback. I think he's an above average quarterback, but I think all quarterbacks are not created equal. And some do better things. And I think everybody wants a different type of quarterback. They don't have that type of quarterback. And not everybody. I hate when I generalize, but you get my point. A vast majority of people think they want play action and under center and motion and Sean McVay and Kyle Shanahan and Mike LaFleur, Matt LaFleur, Mike McDaniel, on and on and on. Then go hire that coach and go build a different offense and go build different personnel in the offseason. Can't do it now. You got to take advantage of what you have. And that's what the Eagles are trying to do. And they got to do it better. But, you know, he's not Jared Goff. He's not Kirk Cousins. He's not Brock Purdy. And they're not Jalen Hurts.
You're not ready to put him in the average category yet.
No. Well above average.
Good stuff, Johnny Mac. John, just your final. We didn't really get a chance to talk about the league news today. We ran out of time. We had a great conversation with 2 guests. I have plenty of topics here that we'll run through tomorrow. But just any thoughts real quick before we I don't know, do you have to run? Do you have to go down to NovaCare today?
Yeah, long day. I got to get down there.
Yeah, so I'll let you go. We'll talk about some of the trades tomorrow on the show. Appreciate everybody in the chat. You guys really showed up on the likes yesterday, and even today we're up over 100. So thanks you guys for showing out. Appreciate all of you guys, JAKIB Nation. Johnny Mac, great show, man. I will talk to you again tomorrow on Birds 365, right, brother?
All right, sounds good. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everybody. See you tomorrow on the show.
You've been listening to Birds 365, the destination for the passionate Eagles football fan who bleeds green. If it's Eagles football, we're talking about it. Debate inside the locker room and guests that are some of the greatest football minds from around the region. We hope you enjoyed the show. We know we had a blast. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll be back soon. But in the meantime, hook up with us on social media at JAKIB Sports. See you next time on Birds 365.